To change your point of view in the 3D world, use the viewport navigation icons at the lower right of the 3ds Max main window. And that's way down here. We've got viewport controls. And they work in both orthographic and perspective viewports, but the controls will actually change depending upon which type of viewport you're in. The one you'll use first is probably pan, which is move. So it looks like a little hand. Click on pan, and that allows you to move left and right or up and down. And likewise in an orthographic view, up and down or left and right. If we move in the perspective view, we're moving in a plane that's parallel to the current view. If we want to constrain that movement, we can hold down the Shift key and drag, and we're moving only in left or right or trucking left and right. We can also hold down Shift and drag up and down to pedestal up and down, or just move in the world Z-axis. So those are the pan controls. Now it's a little bit of a misnomer because when we move around here in the perspective view with that hand tool, it's not actually a pan or panorama. It's really a track or a pedestal. And likewise, the nomenclature of these other items here is a little bit non-standard. We come to the zoom tool. It looks like a magnifier glass. Click on that. And if you then click and drag in an orthographic view, then it does look like a zoom. We're actually magnifying that view. But if we click and drag with a zoom tool in a perspective view, we actually dolly forward and back. We're changing the position of the perspective view. So it's not technically a zoom, it's really a dolly. If you need to zoom in a perspective view or change the field of view or angle of view, there's a button for that. So this is field of view. It looks like a little angle. And when you click and drag in a perspective view, you're zooming in and out, changing the field of view, just like a telephoto zoom lens. Then if you want to move around the scene and sort of orbit or tumble around the scene, then you've got the orbit tool. And it looks like a little planet Saturn. Select that. And you don't want to orbit in an orthographic view. You only want to orbit in a perspective view. Because if you orbit in an orthographic view, it's going to do strange things, and you don't want that. But let's look at orbiting in a perspective view first. Click and drag in the center of the circle, and you're able to orbit around the center of the scene. If you click on the little boxes on the left and right, then you can orbit while maintaining a constant tilt. If you click on the upper or lower buttons, then you're able to orbit vertically. So this is more like a trackball. When you click in the middle, you're orbiting in two axes at once. Now we're not actually going in the third axis, which is a canted angle or Dutch tilt. If we click outside the circle, then we will get a Dutch tilt or canted angle. And that's not usually desirable. If you want to undo that, you may find that the standard undo doesn't work because these undo buttons up here are for scene commands. A scene command is something like creating an object or changing its position or changing some parameter. Those are all scene commands. But these viewport controls are not scene commands. They only control the viewport. And so to undo a viewport command, there's a separate undo buffer. And it's found on the viewport menu. If you click on the viewport label, in this case perspective, you'll get a pop-up menu from which you can choose an undo. Undo view rotate. And this has a keyboard shortcut which is Shift-Z, as distinguished from the ordinary undo, which is Control-Z. So if we do an undo view rotate, we are restored back to a level horizon line. Now, if you do use the orbit tool in an ortho view, this is what happens. You get what's called an axonometric projection, sometimes known as a user view. And it does say orthographic up here, but that's actually a misnomer as well, because an orthographic view has to be parallel to the world coordinate grid. And we're in an arbitrary rotation here. But in this axonometric projection, the lines of the grid still do not ever converge at a vanishing point. So objects maintain their size regardless of distance. So this is something I never use anymore, but if you get into this situation, then once again, you can use the undo. And I've done a bunch of these undos, so I might as well use the keyboard shortcut, which is Shift-Z. And I can do that a few times and get back to my front view. I can always choose the view from this pull-down list. I can choose front view, but I might not be restored back to the same place that I was before. And finally, if you want to zoom in on particular objects, there is a button for that called Zoom Extents. And we got them down here. There's Zoom Extents Selected, and then to right of it, Zoom Extents All Selected. So if we click Zoom Extents All Selected and nothing is selected, then all of the viewports are going to zoom out to enclose all of the geometry. All right, let's select one object. So I'll grab the Select Object tool and select this plant and go back down here and click again Zoom Extents All Selected. And all of the views zoom to show that object. If we want to do it just in one view, we can select an object like that monitor, and we have Zoom Extents Selected. Not Zoom Extents All Selected, but just Zoom Extents Selected. And only that one viewport zooms. All right, so if I want to go back to my perspective view that I had before, of course, I can use the undo and maybe do that again. And now I'm back to the framing that I had before. Those are the basics of using the viewport navigation controls in 3ds Max.